Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed the world with the greatest religion and with the greatest prophet and with the greatest role models, the Ahlul Bayt. Allah sent a man to the Jazeera, Hijaz, to the aristocrats, to the racist environment. The big would eat the little, to the corrupt government, and sent him as a mercy to guide them. Allah sent the Holy Prophet as a man to guide the people of his time and of our time. And before the Holy Prophet, prophets before him, of the like such as Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam, this great prophet, Jesus, son of Mary, Noah. Judaism was established. Prophet Ibrahim, the Abrahamic religion, the foundation of all three major religions today, was established at that time. And they branched forward towards the religion of Islam, the religion of Christianity, the religion of Judaism, where people identify themselves as Jews. We identify ourselves as Muslims, and the Christians, likewise the Christians. Allah sent Jesus to be a man of reflection to the people of Palestine, a time in which medicine was very popular, a time in which corruption was avid. He sent Jesus to guide them. He would tell them, stop being so corrupt, respect the women, be nice to your neighbor, be helpful with your friends, be good, and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tenets and laws and rules that we abide by today. This expanded to Islam. And in Islam, it added, as we can say, the cherry on top of the sundae. It completed the whole image. Religion is from the same light source. It comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah establishes religion through anbiya, prophets. These prophets then practice the religion amongst their people, so the people then have examples. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, you must now pray, he didn't not pray, he had to pray with them. When he told them, now you have to fast, he had to fast with them. He needed to give them an example as to what he means. Otherwise, if people give you commands and orders you to do something, it would be very difficult without seeing an example. And I'll give an example to this. If we look at just modern history, we look at the presidents. There was a president revered amongst all the presidents of the United States, and that's George Washington. They call him the founder, one of the founding fathers of this nation. One reason why they revere this president was because there were no presidents before him, so he can base an example off of his presidency. So they revere him as being the man who led the country into salvation. When you look at other characters, you see that if they had no example to base their life on, then they become revered individuals. And I'll name a few. Alexander the Great, a man that conquered the Middle East and the far east of Asia, and he introduced to them democracy, and today he is being spoken of in schools and colleges and books and institutions. And when we look at other figures, for example, of the like such as Mahatma Gandhi, a man that led India to its freedom and liberation, a man that decided to say no to corruption and yes to justice. These people were revered. Another example, Martin Luther King Jr., a man that said no to segregation, no to racism, the white and the black are like this, no one is above another, and he led the civil rights movement. Yet when you look at these individuals, they all based their rulings from one original source, and that is to promote peace and prosperity. As in today, we want nothing but peace. When people say you have to become Muslim or else, that's where the problem begins. There's no need to say or else you're going to what? Burn in hell? This is not going to convince someone to go to Islam, I assure you. Or else you're not going to find Jannah. Islam is a religion of rules, and not just rules, advice. Islam didn't come down to the people as a commandment. It's not in the Arabic form, istislam, where you have to submit. It's Islam, the religion of peace, where you have your choice. And the Quran testifies. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Lakum deenukum walay deen. If you don't want to become a Muslim, then you have your religion. And if you don't even want a religion, then you have no religion. It's your choice. Another ayah, La ikraha fid deen. The Quran says there is no compulsion in religion. A method today amongst the youth, and not just the youth, anybody that wants to convince people to come towards the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that they begin to use force, involuntary force or voluntary force, through their rhetoric, through their words. They would say a Muslim receives heaven, a Muslim gains paradise, a Muslim this and a Muslim that. Somebody that's a non-Muslim doesn't receive any of this. This is a bad example. This is a very bad approach. Because if you're going to tell them what you're going to miss out, then they're not going to run to it unless they have reasons. And the Quran, like we mentioned in the last two ayahs, testifies to that. The Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When he migrated from Mecca to Medina, he was welcomed by many diverse people of the likes such as the Jews, Banu Qaynuqa', Banu Nadir, Banu Qurayza, and another Jewish tribe. And he was welcomed by the Christians, the very famous Christian tribes in Medina. Medina was a very diverse city. And when he came to them, he didn't compel them. Now you have to be Muslim or else. He said, you be yourself, and if you find Islam comfortable, come to Islam. But now that you're living in Medina under the Muslim rule and government, you have to pay respects to the Muslims. You have to respect the other Muslim. You have to follow the rules of the government, not the rules of the religion, because it's not your religion. So you don't have to fast, you don't have to pray, you don't have to do zakat, you don't have to pay khums. But you have to follow the rules of the government and basically tax. You have to pay tax, and if the government doesn't receive your tax, it's not going to send you its services. So you have to pay tax. Some people then strike Islam, saying that, look, if Islam becomes the most dominant religion, we are all going to have to submit to it and pay all this money. No, it's just tax. It's not wajib, obligatory money that you have to pay because you live under Muslims. Whether you live under a Muslim empire or a Jewish empire or a Zoroastrian empire, there is always going to be a fine that you have to pay for living, simply living in the land that they own. So this is outside of the realm of religion. It's in the realm of politics, actually, the realm of governing and organizing a stable union. Likewise, when the Holy Prophet migrated in the year 611 AD into Medina, he left them be. And he left them be, and he allowed them to do whatever they wanted to do, but pay respects. This was the Holy Prophet of Islam, the man that was sent to be a mercy to all of mankind. And the Quran again testifies to this. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. The Quran says, we've sent you down to be not as a mercy to only the Arabs, or the Lubnaniyin, or the this, or the that, or Banu Quraysh. No, we have sent you to be a mercy to all of mankind. All of mankind can survive and live under the wing of Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad. Now we mentioned that there is a common trend that's being very popular and rising today in the West, and not just the West, in the Middle East. And we typically say the West because most of our problems that pertain to Islam are here. No, a lot of these problems are everywhere. In fact, it's a worldly issue. The issue of Islamophobia, brothers and sisters. Islamophobia is at large, unfortunately, but with every problem there's always a solution. When Islamophobia was at its climax during the September 11th attacks, many people haven't even heard of the term Muslim. Many people can't even tell you what the difference between Islam and Muslim is. And likewise, within the last few years in Paris, France, 2015, when people just simply drew pictures of Rasulullah, drawing a picture of the Holy Prophet compelled a few psychopaths to commit one of the most heinous acts, barbaric, gruesome acts of violence that you can ever imagine, murder. And in so doing, they've blackened and made the image of Islam very, very ugly. And it's no surprise today when you see people staying away, as far away as they can be from the holy religion of Islam, or anything that has to relate to Islam. There was a recent poll done by CARE. They showed a statistic that stated that about 55% of Americans have an unfavorable approach to Islam. They have a bad image of Islam inside of them, 55%. More than half of the whole US population has a nasty impression of Islam. They despise it. They hate it. And we need to ask ourselves, can you blame them? Absolutely not. Because when there are people promoting the religion of Islam through their imbecile methods, then it would be no surprise to see other people running as far away as they can from the holy religion of Islam. The religion was brought down to be spread through peace, not voluntary compulsion. When you want to introduce Islam, don't simply just hand the Quran and say read. To a non-believer, giving them the Quran is simply giving them another book. To us, the Quran is holy. Al-Quran al-Kareem, it's the generous book. It's the most greatest book in our lives. Yes, we revere the Holy Quran and its prominence. And we elevate its status every single day by reading it. But to a non-Muslim, they don't care about the Quran. So when you think a good method to convince other people to the path of Islam is by giving them the Quran, then this is a bad method. This is a very bad idea. Why? Because if you want them and you expect them to understand what the Quran is saying, when you ourselves cannot understand what the Quran is saying, then how can we expect other people to even fathom a few words? And another issue, the Quran was brought down in Arabic, not in English or the language in which the non-Muslim believer is speaking in. It was brought down in Arabic. And when you translate Arabic into English in the literal text, there is a loss in message. There is a loose connection now. When the Quran says something in Arabic, it means it in that language and not in any other language. That's why it's highly recommended for those that can to learn and teach themselves the Arabic language. Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyan. We've brought down a Quran in the Arabic language so you can learn and so you can benefit. And so when we want to introduce people to the religion of Islam, that number one, don't speak Arabic. Number two, are not experts in Quranic exegesis, analyzation, tafsir, examination. Tafsir al-Quran is something that's not easy, brothers and sisters. When you want to analyze a verse in the Holy Quran, you have to go through scholars that have studied this verse, and they themselves can testify we don't even understand 50% of its meaning and value. I won't forget, there is a very famous grand scholar, Ayatollah Sheikh Wahid al-Khurasani, Hafidhahullah, currently in the city of Qom. He says, I have been doing tafsir al-Quran on Surah Yasin. Surah Yasin, he does tafsir for Surah Yasin. And I have been doing the tafsir for just this one surah for the last 3 years. For 3 years, I've been examining one chapter in the Holy Quran, analyzing its meaning and its purpose. But the Quran isn't a book of stories, and it isn't a book of commands. It's a book of reflection. When you read a verse, you begin to open your mind to other realms of spirituality. Spiritualism is very much alive in the Quran. That's why when we refer to the Quran, we refer to it as the holy book of Allah. We don't touch it unless we are in a state of wudu. We don't move in a manner that's not appropriate with the Quran. We don't speak louder than the voice that's reciting the Quran amongst us. The Quran is a book that's not just a book. The Quran is its own universe. So we have it in its own category. So when you give it to somebody else to say, Yalla, read the Quran, inshallah, tomorrow you become Muslim and come to Islam, that is going to be a very big failure. What we should do is, if you want them to be introduced to the Quran, and don't get me wrong, the Quran has many, many values that you can simply pick up just by reading and opening a random page. The Quran teaches you how to walk properly. The Quran tells you to take care of your neighbor, of your mother, of your father. The Quran tells you many things in the literal sense. But there is something that requires an analyzation. For example, the verse speaking of to kill the non-believers wherever you find them. Surah Al-Tawbah, chapter 9, verse number 5. Kill the disbelievers wherever you find them and besiege them until they repent, and so on and so forth to the last of the ayah. To a non-Muslim, when he opens the Quran and he sees this verse, they're going to be scared of the Quran. It's no surprise that when they see this verse, they say, you know what, take your Quran back, I don't want it ever again. It's scaring me. When you give them the verse, give them the translation, and not just the translation, the tafsir of that verse. Why was this verse revealed? As in, is the Quran literally commanding me? No, it's not. The Quran is talking about, in many cases, one particular event that went on in history. Not a commandment to the Muslimin today, but an order by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Holy Prophet 1,400 years ago, when Quraysh, and inshallah we're going to look at this verse so we can at least understand what is the purpose behind certain controversial verses, and we can then put them forth on the table. So as they say, when people ask us, why does the Quran say this, and why is Islam known as a religion of violence? The Holy Prophet of Islam, as we all know, was competing against Quraysh. Not competing for power, but competing for peace. He demanded nothing but to be left alone from these people, these tyrants, the aristocrats of Arabia, and to spread the peaceful message of Islam. They didn't allow that. They said, no, you will not. Our idols of Mecca, we've been worshipping them for the last hundreds of years. If you start a new religion saying, La ilaha illallah, there's only one God, and we have thousands of them, number one, our business will die. Because they would sell these so-called gods. They would sell them. It was a business. They build a god out of mud, out of dates, and then they sell them on the street. This is the god of certain aspect. This is the god of the sky. This is the god of this. This is the god of that. The god of salvation. And they sell them like dolls. They make dolls and they sell them and they call them dolls. And this was more than enough for the people to be convinced, because they had nothing to convince them. They had nothing else alive in their hearts or in the environment or in the society to tell them that no, this is nonsense. How can you worship something that you created? I will never forget the story of a man. He built himself his own God, but he didn't build him with mud or wood or rock or stone. He built him with dates. Dates, I guess if you leave them, they become stale and hard. So he built them with dates and he made it into an image of like a human. And he said, this is the God of Trinity, of tranquility. This is the God of hope. Worship him. And he wanted to sell him. Nobody bought him. He got hungry. He ate his God. He began eating the dates one by one until he had no more God. He ate the creation that he created. He ate what he created. And then the Islam came forth and he said, this is all nonsense. There's only one God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. And we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And guess what? If you don't want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's fine. Lakum dinukum waliy din. It's perfectly okay. And it's perfectly normal. For some reason, Quraysh didn't approve of this message. They wanted the materialism. This is a business. We sell them. People come from the far lands of India, of China actually. They come from very different countries, various countries, just to come and do pilgrimage to the gods that are inside the Kaaba. If we worship Allah, then there will be no more gods. We die, we lose our business. So they fought Rasulullah. They waged war. They fought him until they led him out from his own home in Mecca into Medina. And brothers and sisters, a land that you're born in, that you grew up with, that you saw your family with, that you played with your friends with, that you learned lessons with, that you had an attachment with, is very difficult to leave. So you could imagine how difficult it was for the Holy Prophet of Islam to leave Mecca. When he got away from Mecca and he was at a perspective where he can see the city and he can now continue on his path to Medina, he said something very heart-touching. He says, Allahu a'lam inni la ziltu uhibbuki walakinna ahluki akhrajuni. He says, Allah knows how much I love you, how much I still love you, my beloved Mecca. However, your family, your people were the ones that sent me out of you. I can't stay here anymore. I have to now leave. And he left. But this wasn't enough for Quraysh. They said, no, we want to, above that, fight you. We want to fight you. How dare you take some Muslimi, how dare you take some people and convince them to be on your path? And they were afraid because when they saw and heard of the message of Islam, they were convinced in their hearts. They were convinced. And what is this person called? A munafiq. Somebody that's convinced in their heart something is the al-haq, yet they refrain from it and they act as if it's wrong. This is a munafiq, a hypocrite. They say, no, we don't want this and we will fight you above all this. And so they fought the Prophet in Badr. They fought the Prophet in Uhud. And they fought the Prophet constantly until the Prophet said, no more. We need to stop fighting, because fighting is the least, most desired thing in the category of Islam. Fighting and waging war and killing one another. So what we need to do is settle into a peace agreement. And on the 6th year after Hijrah, Rasulullah met with a few of the men of Quraysh, amongst them Suhail bin Amr from Quraysh, and he met with them under the tree or the area known as Al-Hudaybiyah. And then they made the famous agreement that we are all familiar of, Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, the agreement of Hudaybiyah. And they agreed with one another to not fight each other no more for the next 10 years. And Rasulullah gave them the upper hand. He said, not only that, we don't have to fight each other. If a Muslim goes to Mecca from Medina, you keep him, we don't want him. We're not going to ask for him back. You can keep them. And if somebody from Mecca goes to Medina to join Islam, then we'll send him back. You keep who you want. We give you the upper hand. Just give us this agreement. And no more wars for the next 10 years. And they signed this agreement. They signed it with their own hands and they hung it and they accept it and they put it up into several areas so that people understand what the agreement was, and they announced it. And so moments, not even moments, let's say weeks, months later, as the Muslims were living in peace, and amongst these agreements was to be able to visit Mecca again. We miss it. Our people want to go back to their families. They haven't seen their sisters in years. Some of their wives have still remained in Mecca. Some of their businesses, their homes, their lands, their farms, their property is still in Mecca. And subhanAllah, they abandoned all that just because they heard of the righteousness of Islam. And this is something that's really amazing when you read the history books. Somebody that gives up everything to be on the right path is somebody that truly is strong. They want to go back to Mecca, and they said, yes, you can come, but with no weapons. Agreed, no weapons. Amongst all of these rulings, giving them the upper hand, one night, as the Muslimin were sitting down and reciting Quran, the people from Banu Quraysh ambushed them. They ambushed the Muslimin. People that were sent by Abu Sufyan, people that were sent by Abu Lahab, of the likes, the aristocrats of Mecca, they went and they assassinated some of the Muslims. And then news reached the Holy Prophet. And he said, didn't we make an agreement that was not to be broken, and you broke it. And above that, you didn't just break it, you killed some of the Muslimin. We said no war. How dare you do that? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse. Now you can go and seek your revenge. But guess what? Like always, Rasulullah gives them the upper hand. Why? Because we say, brothers and sisters, Islam is not a religion that justifies violence in any form, or authority or power in any way. He still gave them the upper hand. The verse was brought down. Now kill the mushrikeen wherever you see them. Yes, however, read the next ayah. The next, exactly the one after this ayah says, however, give them moments, time, and the hadith says around 7 months to repent. Give them that long of a time to say, Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilay, to make tawbah for their actions. And if they do, no more. They will not be punished. So all they had to do was say sorry, was say astaghfirullah, was say, oh, Allah forgive me for my actions. And then there would be no punishment. And beyond that, he gave them a time limit of, according to some hadith, 7 months. Just 7 months, and that's it. Those that decided to say astaghfirullah, those that decided to repent for their actions, repented and were freed, were not held reliable and responsible for what they did on that night, on the day that they assassinated the Muslims, even though they had a contract. They made a handwritten contract. Those that did were saved. Those that didn't, the arrogant, the ignorant, the ones that still had fire in their hearts, burning, for whatever reason you have, What is the reason that you have this heart and the flame inside of it burning like the nar of hell? Why? Some people are born this way, apparently. Because when you dig into history, the amount of time Rasulullah helped Quraysh in their times of famine. There was famine in the year 7 after Hijrah. In Khaybar, the people, the aristocrats of Mecca were hungry. There was famine going on. Rasulullah sent them food. He sent them food from the Muslimin to Banu Quraysh. He would give them food. The enemy receives food from the man that they are warring with. Tell me, what religion does this man follow? Because whatever religion this man follows surely must be a religion of peace and nothing but peace and love and harmony. When you feel compelled to give the opposition food, the opposition is the opposition. They are aimed and their only goal is to end you. They want to slaughter you, and at the same time you decide to help them by giving them food, by helping them out. And I will never forget an incident in Khaybar where one of the men approached the Holy Prophet and they were besieging the gate of Khaybar, and the walls were very high. The Muslimin had a very difficult time entering and finishing the war in Khaybar. So one of the companions approached the Prophet and he said to him, Ya Rasulullah, why don't we just begin throwing arrows and using catapults and attacking the city from the outside, just letting them be injured from the outside. Whoever our ammunition hits, it hits. Why don't we do that? We've been waiting for weeks. We've been waiting actually for days and we haven't advanced. Let's just shoot arrows from the outside. Because Rasulullah, what he would do is he wouldn't face the enemy until the enemy was facing him. So this companion says this. Rasulullah says, what about the children and the women? What about the elderly? What about those people that didn't do anything wrong? This point, let's focus on it just for 1 second. He would say, what about the women and the children and the elderly and the sickened? What is their dhanb? What crime have they committed for our arrows to come down and hurt them? I cannot risk that. And Rasulullah would wait patiently until they were man enough to come and face the Holy Prophet of Islam. Rasulullah, as you noticed, gave everyone he faced the upper hand. All the time. And likewise, this transcended towards Al-Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala. How so? When Imam Al-Hussein approached the opposition, the army led by Umar ibn Sa'ad, he approached them and he gave them many opportunities to refrain from fighting. We don't wish war. We don't want to fight you. Many times he approached them with agreements and deals and decisions, saying to them, pleading to them that we do not wish to wage war with you, because all we want to do is move on with ourselves. We want to continue on the path of Islam, and the Islam doesn't promote anything like this. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. And inshallah ta'ala, I will concur with just one incident that relates to the issue of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam giving the upper hand. In one moment in Karbala, a man by the name of Zuhair ibn al-Qayn approaches Imam al-Hussein. And he says to Abi Abdullah, he says, now it's my turn to go and fight, Ya ibn Rasulillah. And he goes, and Imam Hussein gives him the approval. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, when you look at his history, he, according to some scholars, they say that he was against the revolution of Imam Ali alayhi salam. As in, he was, according to one narration, an Uthmani. He was promoting the caliphate of Uthman bin Affan. And he was against Imam Ali alayhi salam at a time. Until the events of Karbala occurred, Imam al-Hussein managed to convince him peacefully, no compulsion. He didn't do anything in any form in which he forced him to come to his side, to his end. The man came through his own will, and he came to Abi Abdullah salamullahi alayh, and he says, it's my turn to go fight, Ibn Rasulillah. I want to give my life for you. For I have spent a big portion of my life fighting Ahlul Bayt, being against Ahlul Bayt, and now it's my turn to repay what I have done, my debt. I have to pay it now. And he goes and he fights the opposition, and he returns back to Abi Abdullah, and he recites very beautiful lines. He says, now my soul will return back to Rasulullah. And not only Rasulullah, Al-Imam Al-Hassan alayhi salam, not only Al-Imam Al-Hassan, Al-Imam Ali Al-Murtada, not only Imam Ali, but he also concurs with a very beautiful saying, ذُو الْجِنَاحَيْنِ الشَّهِيدِ الْحَيَّةِ. And I will return and unite with the one known as the two-winged one. And who is ذُو الْجِنَاحَيْنِ? Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. Ja'far, the brother of Imam Ali. I will return back as soon as I go and do what must be done and face the opposition. Brothers and sisters, tonight, let's not forget, is the second night of Muharram. And inshallah ta'ala, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with the honor of being able to attend these majalis in order to extend our love and our attraction towards Rasulullah, and especially Al-Imam Al-Hussein, for this month is his month, the month in which we dedicate our whole lives for, the man in which we dedicate our whole being for, Abi Abdullah Salamullahi alayhi. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Muhammad and Al Muhammad, to grant us the shafa'ah of Al-Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam, and to allow us the ziyarah of Abi Abdullah in Karbala. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.